In thinking about the highlight of my faith journey, I am reminded of a young man that I met during the early days of activism back in 1981. We had just started Harlem Metropolitan Community Church, and AIDS had surfaced with a vengeance a few months afterwards. Someone in the church asked me to visit a friend of theirs who was in the hospital at Bronx, Lebanon, with a terrible disease that had a name that they couldn't name. Back then, patients were treated like trash. They were placed in solitary rooms, and we had to put on gloves and gowns to go and visit people. The first thing the young man asked me if he was going to hell because of his sexuality. We got past that, and after we got past that, we talked about his life and what he would be doing if he weren't in the hospital. I recall the joy and the laughter we shared in those moments, the joy of celebrating the loving presence of God in his life for the first time. I recall his joy when he was reminded that God had always loved him, that God would continue to love him in all his beautiful, outrageous flamboyance. It is that joy that continues to inspire me and all the rest of us, and the knowledge that through it all, God has gifted us with a special ability to move beyond the pain and step into the hope of God's promised faithfulness. I realized that it was this spirit of joy, this joy of God's presence that had sustained my ancestors through generations of oppression, and because they survived, we will survive. The thing that empowers me the most, however, with this young man was knowing that others like him and like me need to receive always the comforting message of God's unconditional love, and that we need to rest in the confidence we find in knowing that God is a faithful God. Back then, we felt thrown away on so many different levels: community, family, church. There were few places that we could go and touch that. Our challenge moving forward is to accept God's call for our lives with joy and excitement and passion. I am convinced of God's love for and pride in me. I am convinced that if God has a refrigerator, all of our pictures and all of our artifacts are on it.